Do you recognize this? Or this?
Oh my god, you just did a fucking quad! You just did a fucking quad!
Or, for example, this? And the question is, how did we get from that to this? There was once a significant time when turning on Call of Duty wasn't just simply opening another video game. It was more like entering into a very specific, immersive atmosphere, a truly distinct and memorable state of mind. And these were games that didn't need to overwhelm you with stimuli to keep you hooked, because they fully trusted their identity, their rhythm, the way the player related to each game, the environment. There was silence, there was sound, there was frenetic energy, there was an aura. Playing an old Call of Duty meant you were playing a game that had an aura, that had a soul. And I feel like Call of Duty games today don't even have a soul. But above all, I think that Call of Duty games, nowadays, they're not made for the people who grew up and were raised playing Call of Duty. I remember entering maps like Crash, Standoff, Hanoi, Afghan, Wastelands, Bootleg, and feeling like every corner mattered, that every move you made had consequences, that a bad decision couldn't be fixed with a flashy animation or an automatic reward. For example, losing a match hurt, and it hurt even more because the game didn't protect you from that. You'd get wrecked in a match, and in the next match, with the same people, you'd say, all right, I'm gonna give it everything I've got to win this match. There were no battle passes telling you that you were on the right track. Every little action you made to progress, there weren't all these artificial stimuli pushing you to keep playing. You simply played because you wanted to get better. That was the core essence of the game. Playing to get better. Playing for fun. You wanted to understand the map. You wanted to play better than the last match. You wanted to pull off a new streak you'd never gotten before. That was the essence of Call of Duty, something that's been completely lost. And that Call of Duty was built for the patient player, for the one who accepted frustration as part of learning, for the one who understood that progress isn't always immediate. And it's not an instant reward. Instead, the satisfaction would come later, in the future, to the current reality and obviously to whatever people end up wanting to consume. If Call of Duty is like this today, it's not by accident. It's like this because the industry consumes this. We're in the TikTok era. We're in a time where we need constant stimulation. And the moment you have to play a match to get something, if you don't end up receiving something, well, people end up getting tired, just like we've gone from an annual game that didn't add any content to a game where they're constantly bombarding you with stimuli, unlocks, events, camos, rewards. It's completely the opposite of what the essence of Call of Duty is. And it's funny because now, with more technology, more resources, and more people working on making Call of Duty games, nowadays the games are worse than they used to be. Why is that? What is this due to? I feel like the main reason for all of this is that before, the main goal was to create the best game possible. These days, that's not the case. Activision's main goal is to try to sell more, push more microtransactions on you, try to sell more in the store, whatever it is. But always with the goal of making more money. There's a line from De La Fuente, a singer from Granada that I really like, that in one of his songs he says, "Almost all the problems in the world have to do with damn money." And it's clear that money has ended up corrupting Activision and, above all, the franchise. The main goal is no longer to create that immersive experience. It's no longer about making you feel like you're on the battlefield. The main goal of this franchise now is to keep your attention for as long as possible. Because yeah, that's where we are. We're in that era where everything is fleeting. And if you're playing a game or watching a video or whatever, and you don't get constant stimulation, people get bored and end up going somewhere else. The current bald guy doesn't want you to think, doesn't want you to take a moment to look around, to be able to perceive. The details, he doesn't want you to slowly immerse yourself in the game. He wants you to react. He wants you to consume, to keep moving forward without stopping, as if every second of calm was a risk. And above all, to get you hooked on easy dopamine, so you end up falling into the trap of microtransactions. Nowadays, games are full of constant stimuli, sounds, rewards, notifications, events, and systems. They're not meant to enrich the experience, but to make sure you don't get bored inside the game. There always has to be new content all the time for the game to end up being even halfway decent. And sometimes they don't even manage to pull that off. And all of this is done to try to keep that audience and to stop you from closing the game. And this changes absolutely everything, because it's not the same at all. A current Call of Duty is nothing like a Call of Duty from just a few years ago, because this is the key. This is the heart of the matter. We've gone from a franchise in a game where the fundamental pillar was the gameplay itself, and now that's just not the case. Now, the main pillar of a Call of Duty game is dopamine, the stimuli. That's all there is to it. Before, Call of Duty had a clear aesthetic, a serious tone, a sense of weight that you could feel even in things as simple as the sound of the weapons, the menu music, or the way the game greeted you when you started a match. I remember, for example, in Black Ops 2, when the holiday season came around, the game itself would start promoting the arrival of the Christmas noobs. The Christmas newbies, and they'd tell you to go a little easy on them because, well, they weren't going to leave the game. I mean, to have a little patience with them. Nowadays, this doesn't even happen anymore. It's not promoted, and it doesn't have that mystique the game used to have. In Call of Duty 5, in World at War, my first Call of Duty, you actually felt real fear when you were there and you heard, "Dogs, they're coming!" The feeling you got when someone threw a grenade at you and your body was blown in half, bleeding everywhere, flying through the air. In Black Ops 1, the music, the menus, the narrative, they all conveyed this paranoia, this tension, this mystery, and everything was aligned with that identity. Today, on the other hand, everything is designed just to grab your attention. It doesn't even matter if that ends up ruining the game's own narrative. Skins that don't fit the tone, crossovers that feel like they're from another universe, over-the-top animations, loud colors, and events that last just a few days and disappear without a trace. And they're already planning the next one. And the thing is, before, when you played Call of Duty, you remembered maps, you remembered specific matches, certain plays. You remembered those unique moments that stayed with you for years. I've got a little story, actually. A few days ago, another content creator who hasn't played in years messaged me, and he said, "Dude, I just tried out Call of Duty with the free trial. And how is it possible that I know 70% of the maps?" If it's a new game? Well, it's because everything's been remastered. They're trying to do everything through nostalgia, through the old stuff, because nowadays they just can't create anything that's really worth it. We all remember playing Black Ops 3 and being able to get the scythe. Do you remember any game from anyone since? Modern Warfare 2 2022 up to now? You don't, do you? Exactly. Nowadays, what you mostly remember are rewards. Do you remember those levels from the Battle Pass? That skin, which you probably won't use again because Activision is going to take it away from you next year with the new Call of Duty. And none of this happens for no reason. These people have experts on the payroll to study the market and see what the trends are and what people want to consume. All of this, it's not a coincidence. Call of Duty has adapted to a new way of consuming content, to a generation used to constant stimulation, short videos, instant impact, and above all, quick gratification. You can compare, for example, what it took to get a gold weapon in Black Ops Cold War, and I'm not even going that far back, which required at least 4 or 5 hours per weapon to unlock it in gold. To, for example, what it takes today to get a gold weapon in Black Ops 7. You can have it done in just 40 minutes. We've gone from 4 or 5 hours to 40 minutes. Much more instant rewards. And that's because it's a game designed for the TikTok generation mindset. TikToker, for a player who needs to feel constantly rewarded, even when you play badly, even when you don't improve, even when you don't put in the effort. because you're always going to get that dopamine hit from leveling up a weapon, being able to prestige, being able to access this event, being able to get this reward. Another thing my friend told me is that he felt very overwhelmed when he jumped into this new Call of Duty. He said, man, the menus are super complicated. There are so many unlocks and so many things that all the content just ends up overwhelming me. Why isn't it simpler? Everything? And it's that before, the game demanded something from you in return. Now, the game adapts to you so it doesn't lose you, so you don't go play something else. And in this whole process, obviously you lose your identity. The classic Call of Duty, the one we remember, wasn't afraid to bore you, wasn't afraid to frustrate you, and wasn't afraid to lose players. Because it knew that those who stayed did so for the experience, not for the reward. The studios knew that the game they had made was the best game they could possibly make. That's why they trusted their product. That's why the golden age of Call of Duty was the way it was. Because the game was incredibly good. Today, the fear that you'll close the game or that they'll make less money is what ends up ruling this whole ecosystem. And it seems like every decision they make now is designed to keep you playing, not to create memories for you, not to leave you with a feeling, not to leave a mark on what you're playing. And that's why, even though we keep playing, even though we admit that technically it's impressive and has more content than ever, we feel like something's missing. We feel like the magic is gone, that the emotional weight you used to get from listening to. The Modern Warfare 2 soundtrack, or jumping into a match with the Reaper in Nuketown from Black Ops 3. That's already been lost. The thing is, Call of Duty just isn't made for the people who grew up playing Call of Duty anymore. The Call of Duty we knew is dead. It's clearly gotten worse. That player who enjoys the silence while playing a game of search and destroy, of learning, just doesn't exist anymore. The slow pace, the real tension, or that feeling of getting wrecked and then in the next match, you could try to do something to be better than you were in the last match. And maybe the hardest thing to accept about all this is that Activision is obviously to blame for the whole situation, but they're just adapting to the times we live in now. These days, an old school Call of Duty, as we knew it, that just wouldn't work anymore. Nowadays, people don't want that. They don't want a game with just a year of content and then just leave the game as it is. Look, for example, what would happen with the recent X from Feiyan. That's why I think if someone new comes to Call of Duty and ends up seeing a Ninja Turtle skin, you're 14 years old and you see they've added, I don't know, a skin of a character you really like in Call of Duty, I get why you'd like it, and I get why you'd end up buying it, because this game is made for that kind of people. For people who are constantly getting these inputs, constantly seeing these skins and all this fast-paced feeling, be honest with me. If you're 14, 13 years old and you get into Call of Duty and suddenly you see they've added a Ninja Turtle skin, man, you'd go crazy over that skin and you'd end up buying it because the game is made for those people. Call of Duty isn't made for us anymore. And all of this just confirms that the Call of Duty we knew, the one that left a mark on us, the one we grew up with, the one where we made friends, the one where we learned how to do quickscopes, the one where we figured out how to get a nuke, or the game where we stayed up until the early hours of the morning playing and playing. After saying, all right, I'll play one last game, just one more round. Nowadays, Call of Duty just isn't made for us anymore. And probably, even though it sounds harsh, maybe it never will be again. Because times change, and sadly, the game we used to enjoy or the series that used to excite us just doesn't exist anymore. Because now it's something else. But it's not like it used to be. If you like this video, if you enjoyed this format, let me know in the comments. I really wanted to make this video and share this message because it's a shame. But I feel like it's the truth. It's never gonna be what it once was. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.